Did companies do remote work before COVID? Zapier did. In fact, they have been fully remote since being founded in 2011. In this episode, Kim Wilkes, head of talent attraction, shares pro tips for succeeding in a 40-plus time zone remote work environment.
Hey there, I'm Krista Vance, entrepreneur and operations leader.
And I'm Matt Vance, award-winning author and social innovation researcher. We're your hosts of the Culture Profit Podcast.
Your place for purposeful company culture strategy.
Learn from HR pros, executives, and thought leaders how to prioritize profits by prioritizing people.
This episode is sponsored by Mobrium, the best friend of forward-thinking HR leaders, helping you strengthen your employer reputation as a reflection of your real culture.
Learn more at mobrium.com. All right, welcome everyone. Today is all about remote work, and we're honored to have this special conversation with one of the most talented and senior leaders of one of the most well-known fully remote companies. Today, let's welcome Kim Wilkes, head of talent attraction at Zapier. Thanks for joining us, Kim.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cue the applause. Kim Wilkes has spent over 10 years in the talent attraction space, leading full lifecycle teams, sourcing organizations, and employer brand. She currently leads talent attraction at Zapier, whose mission is to make automation work for everyone. She's an advocate for DIBE, which is diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity, employee wellness, professional growth, and remote work. She's passionate about supporting women and people from underrepresented backgrounds in their career journeys and beyond. She's an active member of the Elpha community, where she enjoys helping women uncover new opportunities and making new connections. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Elpha community?
Yeah, of course. I've been a part of Elpha since I joined Zapier about 2.5 years ago. That's when I became introduced to Elpha. And Elpha is basically an organization founded by women that supports women. And it supports women in so many different ways, from being exposed to new job opportunities. Here at Zapier, we share all of our job openings so that women can apply to those. But it's also just a great way to come together and make connections and network and even forge friendships. And when you think about like everything that's been going on in the world these last few years, I think it's a great place for people, for women especially, to come together and to share what they're really going through and find someone that can listen or that can offer a lending ear. So it's been a great opportunity to be a part of it so far.
That is so cool. And I'm going to look into the Elpha community more, but this is a resource that I had not heard of. And so I think that will be so cool for any of our female listeners to look into that more.
Absolutely.
And can you tell us a little bit about you and maybe just a hobby that you've enjoyed in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I've been in the talent space for over 10 years. I joined Zapier 2.5 years ago. I have a really amazing team there. We focus on all things sourcing and employer brand. And outside of what I do day to day, I live in Bellingham, Washington. We're a couple hours north of Seattle. And of course, fully remote, as Zapier is a fully remote company with no offices. So I love being able to be remote and have that flexibility. And I would say in my spare time, I love to do a lot of different things, from fitness. I love getting to the gym on a regular basis. I stay pretty active all day, walking on my treadmill. I love being out in nature and hiking, art. I love live music. There's so many different things. I've got a lot of different hobbies. And I'm also a meetup organizer. I've been organizing meetups over the US now for over 10 years. And it's just been a really great way to get to know different people in different cities where I've moved but didn't know anyone. So that's been exciting too.
And as a side note, when we had an exploration call with Kim earlier, she was walking on her treadmill while we were talking because Zapier was doing a walking competition, like steps, right?
Yeah.
And so such a cool way to incorporate health into the employee well-being and community. That's so cool.
Yeah, and it makes it fun too. It's a fun challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were actually looking at our office like, what could we do here? Which is pretty cool. I'm curious about the meetups as well, Kim. So who comes to those, and where are those, like all across the country, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so I started hosting my first meetup when I lived in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I did it because I didn't know anyone. And I also felt like I really wanted to get back into art. I always loved sketching and drawing, painting. And for me, it was just like a really great way to like push myself to get back into it because I had let go of that for a while, but also then like build community around that too. So my first meetup group was really just focused on that. We were called the MD Sketchers and just brought a variety of different people together, really amazing people that were so talented. I mean, some of these people, they're professional artists, so it made me feel like I'm not really that good at what I do. But we just had so much fun, just like making those connections and building relationships, and also like learning from each other from an artistic standpoint, which was really cool. And then I've since moved all over the country. I've lived in Seattle. I've lived in Austin, Texas. For a while, I moved back to Pittsburgh, where I grew up. And so I've taken these meetups basically everywhere I've gone, just to kind of do the same thing, whether it's focused on art or music. There's a lot of live shows that we go to, or even just getting together for a conversation over a glass of wine. So sometimes they're very casual. Sometimes it's more set on like a specific event that's taking place in the city. But yeah, it's just been such a great way to meet new people and make some really good friends.
That's so neat. And I'm sure you've learned a lot to expand your artistic skills too from other people. That's so cool.
Oh, for sure.
I have to give a shout out to some of my friends here in Cache Valley. We have a group that gets together sometimes. We call ourselves the Scrappy Valley group. So it's, similar thing, it's more about startups and, entrepreneurship and stuff. But I think that's fun to just make connections about shared interests and lots of different ways to just help and support each other. And especially when we're talking about remote work, it's all about connection. And so those meetups are really important to have that human to human connection where it's not just all through digital formats. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the conversation here. Kim, tell everybody a little bit more specifically about your role at Zapier.
Yeah, so I lead talent attraction at Zapier. And Zapier is basically a no-code automation platform, and we connect to over 7,000 different apps, and we help customers streamline their workflows and even build and scale entire businesses using automation and AI. So it's really, really cool to see what our customers are able to do. We actually hosted our user conference, our annual user conference, Zap Connect, just last week. And for me, being there and watching it and seeing what our customers are building using our product, I just felt like so motivated and so energized in being a part of that. So I just think the work that we do is really cool, but then seeing how our customers are using it and how it's supporting their businesses and saving them money and helping them scale faster is just really, really powerful. And honestly, like that's the mission that drove me to work for Zapier. And like I mentioned, we're fully remote, so we don't even have an office. We have 700 plus employees across 40 plus time zones. And so we work pretty asynchronously. And within my role specifically at Zapier, I lead our sourcing organization. So I have a really amazing team that's going out and looking for talent and bringing in talent for the majority of the roles we have open. And they partner very closely with recruiters and hiring managers and really making those hiring decisions to really bring the best people into Zapier. And then the second part of that, which my team is also heavily involved in and leading a lot of initiatives for, is our employer brand, specifically our talent brand. And so that's the second big piece of what I do, but I could not do it without my team and other recruiters that we have within our recruiting org that are just really passionate about this work. And some of that shows up in like building an employer value proposition. Like, what are the things you want to put out there in the world for candidates to know about you as an organization, to our strategic partnerships with diversity organizations like Elpha, Power to Fly, and others. And then just like all of the content that we get to build, and even up to like managing our jobs page and how the look and feel of that is. So there's a lot that goes into it, but again, like it takes a whole team and I think it can be tough at times, but we have a lot of fun with it.
It really does. And employee retention, talent acquisition, employer brand, they're also interconnected, and like even marketing, you pull all of these into this, you need a team to cover all of these different things. And I love, so earlier you mentioned Zapier has been doing remote from the beginning. It wasn't COVID that started that. And so really they've done a lot of things right, whereas a lot of companies who started going remote after COVID have had some growing pains because they've had to transition into that. And so I think Zapier can kind of teach other companies a lot about the right way to do remote work. So tell us a little bit about what they do well with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think I have to say, because I'm someone who started out working in an office, and then I worked remotely for companies that were like trying to figure out how to do it during the pandemic. And granted, they do a pretty good job, but Zapier has been remote from the very beginning. So we've had to be really, really intentional about how we do remote work really well. I think, you know, some of my favorite aspects of like what we do and what I get to experience day to day. One, and I think you might hear this from a lot of other people, I don't know, but I definitely think just the flexibility and the focus on work-life balance is like really, really key. And I know some companies will say that, but you know, I just had conversations with dozens of my teammates around Zapier as I've been revamping our employer value proposition. And that is actually one thing that really showed up in what so many people told me that they loved about working at Zapier and being remote. Like, I know for myself, I can get up early, I can go to the gym, I could log on a little bit later on those days. And if I want to pick up my work in the evenings for a bit, I can do that. If I want to say that I have maybe a doctor's appointment that I want to get to, I don't have to request that time off. I just take a couple of hours during the day and I get to what I need to get to, and I may come back and make sure that my work is done. And I hear a lot of my teammates say too, like, I have the chance to take care of my kids, to pick them up from school, or to take care of them when they're sick. And the big thing about it is that like you're trusted to get your work done. It's not about like how many hours did you work, or were you online between 9 and 5. It's like, were you still able to get your work done at the end of the day, but still have that balance and still have that freedom and flexibility, which I love. And I would say like another thing that I think Zapier does really well, and it's specifically like what resonates with me, is just the growth that comes from being remote at Zapier. Like, for me, coming into Zapier, being a fully remote asynchronous company, I really had to learn how to sharpen my communication skills. I thought I was good at communication, and then I joined Zapier, and they're like, you write too much, or you might like go on about things for a little bit longer than maybe you should, and people can get lost when you do those things. So I had to like really reframe that and think about what I'm putting in writing. Is it clear and concise? I've used ChatGPT, I use Grammarly, I've taken internal writing courses that our company offers, and getting feedback from teammates and my manager. And so I think just like the growth that can come from being in an environment where you're constantly like challenged and encouraged to think about even something like communication. So I think we do that really well too.
That's very impressive. Yeah, I think, why not use some of those tools to help you do your best work? I think they're there, may as well. And honestly, I've viewed myself as a contractor. When I'm an employee, like, can the company find value in what I'm producing? And if they can't, then do they want to keep me? Because like I've just found when I view my own work that way, it really helps. And especially when you're in a fully remote company, you have to communicate so clearly that it's impossible to misunderstand. Otherwise, you know, you don't have those just random bump into each other conversations in the hall where you can re-clarify things. And so you almost have to be retrained to be an independent contractor of sorts, to say, I own everything in my sphere, and I'm making sure everyone understands it. I'm showcasing my value. We're aspiring to be like Zapier in the sense that we're fully remote, but we're a lot smaller. And so that's kind of how we're looking at it. And it's really cool to see Zapier with 700 plus employees doing it and thriving in that, thriving in that type of an environment.
The other thing that's like really cool about what Zapier has been doing, which I actually never did at past companies, is even just something as simple as like sending voice memos or recording a video of yourself, especially if your work is like a little bit more complex, or there's a lot of different facets to what you're trying to share, or maybe you have like tough feedback that you want to give to someone and you don't want it to come across the wrong way. You might record a video of yourself and share that with your peers or share that with someone who's on your team. And I think it just helps in like conveying the message that you want to convey in the right way. So we do a lot of writing and we use Slack a ton, and we're always communicating that way. But I think just being able to like simplify that and even shorten the number of meetings that you have to be in, saying, hey, here's a quick overview of what I wanted to share, so we can actually spend our time in our meeting talking about it and coming to a decision on this thing. So that's been really key. And it was not easy for me at first when I joined. I was like, you want me to record a video? Are you sure? Point where I'm like, oh, let me just send you a quick video because I know it's going to be so much easier.
Yeah.
And clearly you're so comfortable with it now, right? Because you're doing a great job being here.
Definitely don't worry about like being perfect, and it's okay. Like, we're human.
Yeah.
We trip up over our words. We say the wrong things. And like, that's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think just hearing how Zapier has been doing remote work, to me, it seems like the more efficient way for a company to run, because you're able to just weed out a lot of the stuff that's time sinking and not really productive into the work and into driving the company forward. And so are there any like setbacks or challenges that Zapier has faced doing fully remote that you'd like to share?
Yes, I definitely can, because no company is perfect. And this is actually also a question that I've asked a lot of my teammates as I've gone around and talked to many different teammates as I built our employer value proposition to like be really clear about what do we do well and what do we not do well, or what are our challenges. So I feel like the timing of this is perfect because I've just talked to a ton of different people across the company. One, I would just say, like, being a company that is so transparent, like we share all information that you could possibly need in like public channels. We have our intranet. You have leaders sharing videos left and right about our product and what's new and what's changing. And that's all amazing because you have access to anything that you could ever want. And not a lot of companies do that. Sometimes you're left waiting in the dark, or you don't know what's happening. You don't know what's going to come next. So I love that. But a challenge with that is that it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of information times, especially in Slack. So being able to like keep up with that, being able to like sift out, what do I really need? What's not important for me? What do I prioritize? What do I not prioritize? For me, there's a lot of things I see where I think, oh, that probably doesn't really pertain to me. I'm not going to prioritize going through all of that information right now, or I might even save it. And when I get extra time, I'll go back to it later. But I definitely think like you have to be that kind of person that's willing to just thrive in that kind of environment where you have a lot of information that's coming at you. You know how to prioritize it, where to place it, when to go to it. It can take a while. It doesn't come from day one, but I think that like that information overload is definitely one. And I know I talked about like the written communication piece. That can be tough for some if you're not used to writing a lot. And the last thing I would say too, and this is probably the same for like any remote company, but just being comfortable being in a setting where you could end up feeling isolated. Like if you're the type of person that really thrives in having a lot of that social interaction, you're not going to really get that in a remote environment. Like there's ways that you can counteract that. We have customer meetups and we have city meetups, so our own teammates can still meet each other. But day to day, you're working really hard in solving these challenges, and you're usually doing it from your home office or from wherever you're working, and you don't have all of that around you. You don't have the chance to say, hey, do you want to just go grab lunch real quick? So it can be hard if you're not that person. And my advice is just to always, for folks that aren't sure, like, I don't know, just get a sense of, is my environment conducive to this? Would I really thrive in this kind of environment? Or is this going to be a challenge for me? Or are there going to be a lot of distractions for me? Or am I just going to feel alone being in this kind of setting? So that's what I always ask folks to think about, because it's not always easy.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've discovered with any employer brand, being clear about what your company does can help attract the people who are a right fit for it. Yeah. And, you know, everything you just listed, those can be challenges, but, you know, being transparent and providing all that information, that is definitely a positive, even if there are some, you know, challenges with that of having to sift through the information and then having the remote and the flexibility. That is a huge positive, but has the challenge of maybe some isolation. And so it's just finding the right fit, the right talent for that role.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's why, we spend so much time throughout our interview process and really getting to know folks, and not just their skills and their experience and what they would do in the job, but really getting a sense of, would they be someone who would be really successful here? Would they really enjoy working in this kind of environment? Like, we face a lot of change. We shift direction a lot. If our customers need something different, we might deprioritize something and reprioritize something else. So I just we really try to spend time having those deep conversations throughout the interview process with the hiring manager, with whoever the final interviewer might be, and just, again, like, really sharing, here's what you can truly expect. These are the challenges you're really going to face, and make sure that that's clear to them, so then they can make that decision of, is this the right place for me, or maybe it's not.
That makes total sense. And I think the theme for me about Zapier is intentionality, like being so purposeful with everything. And I think it's really interesting that Zapier doesn't require resumes for job applications. We want to hear more about how you guys identify who is a good fit. And I'm also curious, how do you support someone when in that off chance it feels like it's actually not the best fit after somebody's there? So tell us more.
Yeah, so I would say, like, to the first point that you made about, like, not requiring resumes, I think we've always just tried to put ourselves in the shoes of other people and just think, how can we make this the best experience possible? And so I love that Zapier is just really forward thinking and always willing to do things differently. We don't just say, oh, well, all these other companies are doing this, so we're going to do the same thing. We actually take a step back and think, how could we do this better? And so one of those things that we've done is not requiring resumes. You can apply to an open job with your LinkedIn profile, or you could even just fill out our application process or fill out our application questions. And I think it just makes it such an inclusive process, and it reduces any barriers. Like, I think about people who are really happy in what they're doing today. They may not be looking for their next role. They don't have a resume put together. They don't have the time to put a resume together, but maybe this is a really great fit for them. They have the chance to just share their experience, and they also get to share the impact that they could make for us at Zapier. So when somebody applies, we have a recruiting team, we review all of the applications ourselves, and we commit to providing updates within 7 business days. So we just really want to do our best to say, hey, you tell us what you're able to do and how you can help us make an impact, and we'll commit to getting back to you within a week so that at least you know where you stand.
Wow. There's so many companies out there that don't follow up at all. I mean, how many posts are there on LinkedIn that say, I've been ghosted X number of times for applications? So are you guys using Zapier? Are you automating that 7-day response? Like, what does that look like?
Well, we love to automate things. We actually, I can't say that we automate that. I mean, we review every application, and then we do send those messages out to candidates for specific reasons as to, hey, you're a fit, let's schedule the interview, or I'm sorry, this isn't going to be a fit, and generally here's why. It might be skills, it might be location. So we're looking at all of those things. But we do use Ashby. Ashby is like our ATS CRM, and there are some ways that we can incorporate automation and AI to, like, help us in crafting the right message or making sure that it gets to people at the right time. We also have dashboards that will say, like, hey, you've done a great job across all of these roles and getting back to folks within 7 days. Maybe for this role, you're a little off, and your number of days is starting to creep up a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're getting back to them. So we try to use, like, all of those tools the right way to make sure that we're providing that, like, really positive human experience.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great. And then on the end of, maybe you've hired somebody and maybe it's not a good fit and they have to head in a different direction, or maybe they've stayed with Zapier for a while and they move on to something else for personal reasons. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do to make that transition positive for both parties.
Yeah, so for candidates, we have a talent community, and we welcome folks to simply fill out a form on our jobs page and become a part of our community. And that way, when we open new roles, we go to that community and we see who's already there, who might already be a fit for a role.
Awesome.
And we can then easily just bring them back into the process if the timing works for them, of course. And then we stay connected with them through our talent community by inviting them to virtual events that we host as a recruiting team, or even our quarterly newsletters to just share, like, here's the newest things happening at Zapier. And a lot of times we'll invite them to company-wide events and sharing our open jobs. So really just hoping to make them feel like we still care and we still want to stay connected and stay in touch with them.
Really neat. Yeah, I think that's cool to think about things beyond just the, the employment life cycle of when someone either isn't a fit through the recruiting process and staying connected in that way with the community. A lot of companies don't do that. And I think the way that you and your team and Zapier is providing support with those different events and things like that, it shows a higher degree of care. And I love the word showcasing. It's more like giving samples, right? You're saying this is the type of experience you can expect from us when you're employed. We want to give you a little bit of a sampling of that by staying connected with us. I think that's really, really neat. But yeah, thank you.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners today, Kim?
Yeah.
Well, you had asked too,
wisdom.
how does that like show up with employees too? And so I definitely wanted to touch on that too. I'm sorry I didn't want to not get to your second part of the question there, but I think when you think about the employee life cycle and the employee journey, you're bringing folks in to hopefully be really successful and really thrive at your organization long term. It's not just about bringing people in, but it's about making sure that they're set up for success, they have the right tools, they have the right support, and that they also have like a path to continue growing. And that could look like so many different things. It could just be growing as a professional. It could be growing into a new role, getting a promotion, moving up into management or leadership. It can look so many different ways. But I think what's really cool is like even beyond like the coaching that we offer or the tools and the resources that we offer, we also have a program that I've never seen any other company have before. And we call it our Next Play program. And it's a program that supports folks in either helping them move up in the company or even helping them transition out, which I think is so unique. And anyone at the company can send a message to our team of recruiters. We have just a few select recruiters. We're all fully trained on providing the right coaching, and it's all confidential, but somebody at our company could reach out to us and say, hey, I'm struggling in XYZ area. Could I talk to someone on the team? Or I have some questions about considering a new job outside of my role. I'm not sure what steps to take. Could I talk to someone? And so we would chat with them and we would encourage them, like, talk to your manager, let your manager know this should be an open conversation. And in some cases, we're able to give them advice and tools to help them stay in their role and like be really happy in their role.
Yeah.
In some cases, they might say, I've been here for a while. I'm ready for the next thing. Like, how many of us stay at our company throughout our whole lives, right?
Yeah.
Sure. How can we help you? Can we help you with your resume? Can we help you look for your next job? Can we help you prepare for interviews? And a lot of us will stay in touch as coaches, like even once they've exited the company, and they'll stay in touch with us and we continue to support them in that way. And I just think that's amazing because we really care. And I see our leaders really caring about people beyond just, oh, you're at our company or you're not. Like, we care about you as a human in whatever regard. And we just want you to be happy and we want you to be successful, even if that means it's not here at our company anymore. Just really amazing.
Not just if you're working for us, right?
Exactly.
I think that, taking an approach of putting the person first, it is putting the business first. There are byproducts to that philosophy and that approach that directly benefit the company. Like from our vantage point at Movrim, looking at employer reputation, there's research around the average star rating of current employees sharing reviews and former employees sharing reviews, and a former employee tends to rate their employer half a star lower than a current employee that's leaving a rating and review. And the fact that you're giving such support to put that individual's needs and goals and desires above just a transactional consideration of how do we reduce costs for the business or how do we protect the business, that's buying an added measure of loyalty and engagement that oftentimes isn't being considered for a lot of companies. So even if and I'm not saying you should do it for this way, but I'm thinking about, other listeners who may be having a conversation with their boss to try to get buy-in of why we should have a more personal touch. Sometimes the conversation to that business leader is
the bottom line.
Yeah,
The
this
money.
is why putting the person first is good for business. It's buying that added loyalty and engagement, because everybody talks, everybody stays connected. And so after someone leaves, it's amazing to have that good taste in your mouth of the employer that you're leaving. And you're more of a fan, you're more likely to refer people who would be a good fit there. And there's just lots of good things that come from being a good human and caring about people and their goals and where they're headed.
I love that transparency so much.
That's so well said. That definitely resonates with me. And I think any company, they can offer these sorts of things. I think it's just about taking the time and making it happen. Like this program that we have, it was an idea of a colleague of mine, and some of us on our TA org just said, let's get together and let's make it happen. And we went through some coaching together, and there it is. It's live. It's not something that took a ton of money or a ton of time. It was just saying, hey, if we care about this, let's make sure that we're offering it and we're talking about it and that we're available.
Yeah, and doing something like that really showcases that care, and and then it's just acting on a system that you guys have in place. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Very incredible.
So one thing you told us in our exploration call was to help me know how Zapier is pronounced. We're happier at Zapier. And I love that. And clearly Zapier is doing so many things right. And for all of our listeners, check Zapier out and follow them for great ideas for remote work and making that successful and being happier at Zapier. And follow Kim on LinkedIn as well. And we'll provide those resources on our highlight article. And thank you so much, Kim, for being on our podcast today.
Oh, absolutely. This was so much fun. I'm so glad that we've had the chance to connect on this topic in particular, and just really appreciate the time. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kim, and thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Culture Profit podcast and for being a part of our journey to prove that putting people first is best for business.
Today's episode was sponsored by Mowbray.
Want to get more employee reviews and streamline your employer reputation? Visit mowbray.com.
Now go find one way to prioritize your people and watch your profits grow.